Welcome back. Well, yes, picking up on the conversation about the minimum wage, we've got Mr. Timothy Olawale, who is the Director General, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA, who joins us from our studios in Abuja. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. Previously, before this was assented to, before the approval of the 27,000 Naira minimum wage by the National Council of States, there has been comments credited to you where you say, well, dilly-dallying or wasting time on this will be counterproductive to the economy and that it will be difficult for the country to cope if labor eventually downs tools. But now that they've acceded to approve the 27,000 Naira and then reports indicating that they've transmitted it to the National Assembly, have you modified your views ever since?
Good morning, Nigerians. I want to start on the note of the position we took before with regards to the delay. Our concern with regards to the delay in transmitting a bill to the National Assembly to give effect to the national minimum wage. And that was born out of the threat of bedlam in the industrial sector, as reflected by the threat of a national labor movement to go on strike. And of course, we are all very conversant with the devastating effect of the 3 days warning strike that we experienced earlier on in the year, last year. And we just didn't want a repeat of it because even those 3 days warning strike, organized businesses are yet to recover from the devastating effect. And having followed through the process now with the transmission of the bill to the National Assembly yesterday, I think we should, in the first instance, give a sigh of relief because, like I usually say, it's a process. Part of the process was for the National Economic Team to sit and advise the President, followed by the National Council of State to also advise the President. And that process has been followed. The President has gotten his recommendations from them, and in his wisdom, he has transmitted his own perspective on the national minimum wage to the National Assembly. And the next step in the process is for the National Assembly to do due diligence. What has been sent to them is not cast in stone. It's also a proposal, which is a bill for them to consider. It's now left for them, based on their own conviction, to accept it, revert to the 30,000 Naira recommended earlier on, or even improve on it. It's up to them. That's still my position.
Do you say, now that this 27,000 Naira seems to be the big bone of contention for Labour especially, who says that you arrived at a figure, 30,000 Naira at the end of the tripartite committee meeting. Now it has been pushed to, or should I say scaled down to 27,000 Naira, and it's with the National Assembly now. What do you expect to come out from the National Assembly? Will it swing in the way of Labour, just so that we avert a strike?
Well, if you ask me, as it is now, there is no basis for strike because, like I said, it's a process. And what we recommended as the tripartite committee was a recommendation. And what recommendations means is that it is not cast in stone. In other words, it's not an imposition on the presidency. Granted, there are 30,000 was desirable, but I think the only aberration in what transpired at the Council of State is that national minimum wage is supposed to be a figure, not two figures of 27,000 and 30. If it's 27, let it be 27. If it's 30, let it be 30. It's not supposed to be two figures. We said national minimum wage. We didn't say national minimum wages.
If you just allow me to come in, just so that I can get this through to you. Because one wonders, that why the hue and cry from Labour, since you said it's not cast in stone. Labour is insisting on the one hand that it must be 30,000 naira, and then the government says that, okay, perhaps the states have got the capacity to pay at this level, considering the cumulative sums at other levels, not necessarily the minimum wage, that the state governments will have to incur. And that seems to have been the same issues that they faced when the minimum wage was 18,000 naira. How do we work ourselves out of this?
The reason I said it's not cast in stone is that if you say something is a recommendation, it is supposed to be advisory. In other words, the president set up a committee to say, advise me, recommend to me what should be the ideal national minimum wage. And that was the job that was done by the committee. We've advised the president. And it's supposed to, the presidency or the Council of State or even the National Assembly are not supposed to just automatically rubber stamp. Yes, granted that in 2000 and 2010, the recommendations were accepted without any tinkering. Yes, that is desirable. But even at that, there is nothing that says that government cannot make input to the recommendation. So it's a recommendation, and I don't see why that should cause any hue and cry. I think the next line of action will be for Labour to intensify its lobby machinery with the National Assembly. If with superior argument, perhaps the National Assembly will see reasons with Labour on why it has to be 30,000 or even more than 30,000 naira. They are also not supposed to rubber stamp. So in other words, let the National Assembly do its own job and come out with its final position.
If Labour refuses, what if the president withdraws assent? Let's say, okay, the bill has gone to the National Assembly and the National Assembly says, okay, Mr. President, you recommended 27, we have adjusted it to the minimum 30,000 naira that Labour is asking for, and it gets back to the president and the president withdraws his assent. What happens then?
Well, we are only speculating, and that's an assumption, a scenario that could occur. But even if that happens, I don't think we should dissipate energy on how and when we will cross that bridge. When we get to the bridge, we'll cross it. But I also want to know that the president is not insensitive to the yearnings and the process, the yearnings of the workers, as well as the process of arriving at a national minimum wage. He has his own part to play. The National Assembly has their own part to play. But even if in the final scenario, the National Assembly decides to push a figure that is not in consonance with the belief of the president, everybody has one way or the other. The fear, which I assume you are expressing, is that it may send the labor unions back into the trenches to start another round of agitation or protest. But like I said, when we get to that bridge, we cross it. I hope it will not get to that.
All right, another question that comes to mind, I mean, let me first of all take you back to a comment you made the other time, and then we'll talk about some private sector matters. In 2001, during the Olawale-led NLC, there were two figures of the minimum wage, 5,500 naira for the states and 7,500 naira for the federal workers at that time. That was also in the law. So isn't it possible that there could actually be two figures in that law?
You know, even that was arrived at for convenience, just because of the issue of affordability. You know, which is also what has thrown up all these hues and cries about is affordable, is not affordable by the state governors. And it's just a way out of the logjam. But like I said, it's an aberration. National minimum wage is supposed to be just one figure. But, you know, in our ingenious way in Nigeria, when we find ourselves in a cul-de-sac, there is always an ingenious way of wriggling out of it. That's our homemade solution, which is okay if it's going to resolve issues and not lead to unnecessary logjam in the industrial system, industrial relations system. But like I said, ordinarily it's supposed to be one. But having said that, now that we have two figures pushed, but we also need to look at the justification for the recommendation of the two figures. The federal government says, yes, it will be able to accommodate the 30,000 naira. And to also carry along the state governments that has actually been crying about the non-affordability of the 30,000 naira. Because in life, you only move forward in negotiation through concession. It's give and take. And for us to arrive or to move forward with regards to this process, then that was why the Council of State in its wisdom decided to shave 3,000 naira to say, okay, let's have 27,000 naira as the concessionary figure that the state governments are expected to work with. And that also takes care of a concern which we had expressed before in the private sector. And that also has to do with the SMEs, the small and medium scale enterprises. Because the only reservation we had was that it might actually not be sustainable for them. Even though we also have a threshold for exemption, which is for 25 staff or workers, which we believe will take care of their interest, but a further reduction to accommodate their peculiar situation of being a micro or small businesses. This also is part of the positives of the development.
Okay, just to be clear, the only one figure has been sent to the National Assembly, and that is 27,000 naira. But then also bear in mind that it's minimum wage. So there an employer can decide to pay a lot more, which also raised an issue. Part of the